Good afternoon. I'm Monica Mohindra, the director of the Veterans History Project. The donation ceremonies here at the Library of Congress are always an exciting time for us because they represent the culmination of an enormity of work, hard work, and finally knowing that these individual, important veterans' stories will forever have a home with us here at the Library of Congress for the benefit of the nation today, they're served and dealt with today, and tomorrow. However, today is an exciting opportunity not because it's a culmination, but because it is the beginning, a very significant one at that. The collections being donated today represent the first collections donated by the Office of Senator Angus King and his efforts. And when a senator's office begins collecting veteran stories, more often than not, an inaugural effort turns into a regular effort that feeds itself and uplifts the stories of all veterans across the state. Our allies and participants in the Senate are in a unique position to reach veterans all across their state. And seeing a senator take the opportunity to begin a program that very well may end up touching the lives of hundreds or even thousands of veterans and their families in an exponentially growing way is truly a monumental and momentous occasion. It can't be overstated. Okay, that's gonna sound a little presumptuous from here at the Library of Congress, but if you don't know about the experiences Senator King has already had talking to veterans across the state of Maine and listening to the stories, I have heard all about how much the senator truly enjoyed meeting with these veterans, listening to them with this seriousness of purpose, and how much their stories personally inspired him and the work of his office. I think I can say confidently that this is not going to be the last time we see Senator King and his staff here at the Library of Congress with a box full of interviews that we'll be fortunate to take today. But no matter if they donate, senators that is, 1 box or 100 boxes, we are deeply appreciative on behalf of the nation of all the work you and your staff have put into these interviews. And I know personally, with a husband who served at NAS Brunswick, that the veterans of Maine and their families appreciate it as well. Though nobody may be more appreciative than the researchers, you who were able to see in the Maine reading room, who use our collections, because out of over 114,000 individual stories in the Veterans History Project, we have some work to do in the state of Maine. Currently, there are 300 stories from the state of Maine. So there's more to do to make sure that those voices are represented and expand our national understanding of our collective history. It's more than just the responsibility of individuals like Senator King. It is a responsibility for the entire state of Maine to pause and to listen to the veterans and to their stories of service and sacrifice. Thank you so very much, Senator King, and thank you to everyone in your office who helped organize the interviews and collect the stories. You have ensured that the voices of veterans you interviewed will actually live on. We tend to think of that as being something that lives on because we're speaking to individual veterans, but the truth is that legacy of service and that life-living property of that legacy is not just because you're taking these individual personal narratives, it's because of the use and what happens to them once they're here. They don't sit on dusty shelves, but they're used every day. Countless of communities across Maine and the nation will benefit for this. On behalf of the Veterans History Project and the Library of Congress, we gratefully accept these collections. But before we do what I like to do, which is get the collections on behalf of the Library of Congress, I understand you have some remarks you'd like to share with us. Would you join us?
Thank you, Madam Director, and thank you for the incredible work that's going on here. And I just wanted to share for a couple of minutes why I think this is so important. The first is history. We are literally recording history that can inform our future. One of my favorite sayings from Mark Twain, everybody has one, is history doesn't always repeat itself, but it usually rhymes. And that means we all have something to learn from history. For example, the first interview I did was with a fellow named Carmen Picarelli. Carmen served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He served in the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army in one career. And sadly, a few months ago, we lost him. So his history would have been lost other than the inspiration of this program. History is so important in the work that I do every day. In fact, one of my staff members is here. We were at a committee meeting the other day, and I turned to her afterwards and said, "You just saw history made in this committee room today." I hope that the Congress can follow up and make that history a reality. The other thing that's, I think, important about these interviews is that they can inform policy. Not only are we learning history, which is important in its own right, but for example, I had an interview with a young man who's a veteran who's had some real difficulties coming out of the service and has become very concerned about the issue of veteran suicide, which is a real crisis in this country. 20 veterans a day are lost to suicide. He made a point to me in our interview that he thought it would be worthwhile to ask the military to look at veteran suicide by job classification, to see if there were any patterns, if you're in a certain job, that created additional pressure that made suicide a more likely problem or an outcome. And lo and behold, that's an amendment that's in the National Defense Act that will be on the floor of the U.S. Senate in a few weeks. And it came out of that interview. We're asking the Defense Department to study the issue of veteran suicide by job classification to see if there are places where there's additional danger that we should address. So history, policy, and I think the final piece is listening. People in my business don't listen enough. And that's what this program is all about, is listening to the veterans from a variety of backgrounds, from a variety of conflicts, with a variety of experiences. Everything from being a trainer to being a master sergeant to being in Afghanistan, Vietnam, all across the board there were stories to be listened to. And Maine has, we think, I don't have the exact figures, the second or third highest percentage of veterans in the country. So the veteran community in Maine is very substantial and engaged, and by listening, we always learn something, and we learn ways that we can work with veterans in the future to make their lives better, and to also, based upon their testimony, to make the lives of future service members better. So this has been an extraordinary experience for me. I don't know if you know this, Madam Director, but prior to politics, I was an interviewer on Maine Public Television. And so being able to get back into the role of asking questions and listening to the answers and trying to follow up was a little bit of my own personal history. So this has been, I think, an amazing experience for me, for my office, and it is something that we want to continue. And it also is so important to have these stories told. So with that, I want to offer you the first installment of the Maine Veterans Project, Maine Veterans History Project, to the Library of Congress, and it will now be available for scholars and policy research into the indefinite future.
The indefinite future, and we receive this so gratefully.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.